I'm Bhikhu Parekh, and with me today is Professor Raphael Cohen-Almagor to discuss his newly published book called Just Reasonable Multiculturalism, published by Cambridge University Press in July earlier this year. Professor Raphael, I welcome you, and may I start with a simple question. Why did you choose this area to explore? So much has been written about multiculturalism. Did you feel you had something new to say?
Thank you, Bhikhu. I've been researching and reading about multiculturalism for many, many years. I started my journey back in 1993. That was the first time that I started to think about multiculturalism. I think that I'm well versed in the literature of multiculturalism. I read a lot, and I published a few articles, but I didn't have any intention to write a book because there was not urge in me to write a book, and I was preoccupied with other issues. What prompted me to write this book was statement by Prime Minister David Cameron, who said that multiculturalism in Britain failed and that it might lead or promote extremism and terrorism. And when he said that, I said, well, I think that's enough. We're used to attacks on multiculturalism, that it's bad for democracy, that it's bad for women, that it's bad for minorities, but to say that it actually promotes terrorism, this is actually what prompted me to say, okay, I need to embark on this journey. So this journey lasted exactly 10 years. I started in 2011 and started to compile the information and to have a model for thinking and a theory that I can develop. And this came into fruition in July 2021.
Well, anybody who cares to read the book will soon see that it is the product of a mature reflection over a number of years. Enormous amount of learning and wisdom has gone into this. And that leads me to this beginning of your journey, resulting in a book, the title, Just Reasonable Multiculturalism. Now, two adjectives sometimes puzzle people. What is the difference between just multiculturalism, which someone like Rawls might talk about, and reasonable multiculturalism, which again someone like him might talk about? Why do you have two rather than just one?
Bhikhu, thank you very much. It's an excellent question. And of course, the title of the book is very, very important. And one devotes a lot of attention to the title. My theory is within the realm of liberalism. And within the realm of liberalism, there are many answers why should we accept certain governance. What is the best form of governance that is suitable for the best interest of people? What is the key for good life? And liberals gave different answers. Some say equality is the key. Some said liberty is the key. Some said happiness is the key. Some said tolerance is the key. And still others said that justice is the key. And I believe that justice is indeed the key for a good life. If you have a just form of governance, then ipso facto, it will serve the best interest of the people. Now, there are many interpretations of what is justice. And here I think that we have a due gratitude to John Rawls that in many respects provided us with an idea of what justice is and how it looks like in the political liberalism, in the framework of mind of liberalism. But I don't think justice would be enough when we're talking about multiculturalism. And I was thinking what else is missing here that is needed for a comprehensive theory of multiculturalism. And I came to the realization it has to be the concept of reasonableness. And I think that this concept is of great relevance and importance for addressing the question whether liberalism and multiculturalism are reconcilable, because this is my thesis. My thesis is that liberalism and multiculturalism are reconcilable, but provided that multiculturalism is reasonable. Now, my assumption is, as a liberal, is that people are rational beings, and people are capable of reason, they seek to secure a stable and just system of governance that will respect their own basic rights as well as the rights of others. Of course, we do recognize the need for common life and for living together. And the second thing that why reasonableness is important, the reasonableness of cultural right is determined by its significance for the cultural group. It is crucial for the livelihood of the group, then it is obvious of importance for the group, notwithstanding whether others may think that this right or this behavior is unjust or unreasonable. So if a certain right is significant for others and become integral part of the social and family life of the group, and it perceived as important for the heritage, for the sustenance, then we have to appreciate that. And we have to appreciate it because of it being reasonable for that group, even if we perceive it as offensive and even unjust, we as an outsiders. Cases in point that are considered in the book are cases of male circumcision and female circumcision. Others may see this unreasonable, unjust, offensive, not to be right, whereas the group itself may deem it very, very reasonable and very just. And this is where we try to reconcile between liberalism and multiculturalism, asking ourselves, okay, so should we intervene in this practice or not? This is one of the major questions that I'm trying to answer in the book.
And you have just multiculturalism, which is not reasonable.
Yes.
I'm trying to see what you get by adding reasonable to multiculturalism. You have already said something about it, very interesting. I just want to ask you to explore a little further. What would happen to multiculturalism which was just, but not reasonable?
Well, it might be the case that whatever we consider to be just would not be considered reasonable for the others and vice versa. I think that the two concepts actually supplement each other and provided a more forceful argument for multiculturalism when and if it is decided that we as a liberal society will be able to tolerate it. There's an extra layer of reasoning that is coming into the fore.
So does it give you a new line of defending multiculturalism? If as against David Cameron and Angela Merkel and others who have attacked multiculturalism, and if we wanted you to represent a case for multiculturalism, what would be your case? That multiculturalism alone is just and reasonable in its treatment of minorities, and therefore we should practice it.
Well, as I said, there are two traditional attacks on multiculturalism. One is that it's bad for democracy, because in liberal democracy, everything stems from the individual, everything returns from the individual. And when you put group rights in the focus, this might come at the expense of individual rights. So that's one attack that I'm addressing, and that's the traditional attack. It's something that multiculturalists have been addressed before me. There's nothing that is new in that respect. Second attack is that it's bad for women, because every time that group comes with demands to secure their own group rights, the victims happen to be women, unfortunately. And this is correct, and a lot of my book is devoting its attention to the issue of women's rights, children and women's rights, and the idea that liberal democracy is obliged to come to the help of vulnerable people. The additional layer that I'm adding in this book is the issue that's David Cameron, that it's promoting or helping extremism and terrorism. This issue was not tackled adequately until now in the literature, and that's something that I try to do. So I developed a very comprehensive theory that I call just reasonable multiculturalism, that aims to answer these three questions: whether multiculturalism is bad for democracy, whether it's bad for women, and whether it promotes terrorism, by first explaining what liberal democracy is all about, then explain what justice, what do we mean by justice, is all about. And this is, as I said, I'm in debt to John Rawls. Then I'm considered the question of reasonableness and what does it mean, and how it supplements the issue of justice, and what does it mean in the context of multiculturalism. I discussed the democratic catch, that the very principles of democracy might open way to its destructions. And I pay particular attention to the concept of compromise, of deliberative democracy, and to coercion. Because if we're going to prohibit certain rights, cultural rights, then we need to coerce them. And sometimes coercion will be justified. Another thing that I think that is important in my book that other books did not do before me is that I have two case studies, two country case studies. One is France, another is Israel. In both countries, the issue of security and the issue of objecting to terrorism come to discriminate against minorities, and I think wrongly. So I criticize both France on their attitude to, say, Muslim women's dress, and in Israel, I criticize the Israeli establishment government for its discriminations against the Arab minority.
Well, that's very good, very thorough. And that leads me on to the next question, which is how does your multiculturalism, or your theory of multiculturalism, differ from that of others who have been advocating it? Kemlika, whom you frequently quote, a lot of other people. What is the distinctive mark so that one could say that is Cohen-Almagor's multiculturalism, not mine, not anybody else's? What is distinctive?
Well, I think it's very, very comprehensive. I think that it has 4 layers of analysis. One, the level of that when explain what's liberal democracy and what just liberal democracy is all about. That's the first layer. The second layer is when I speak what is reasonable multiculturalism, that I try to accept multiculturalism at the same time, say that it's within certain limits. And this is where I'm assisted by the democratic catch, explaining that the very principle of democracy might bring about its destruction. Then there's the issue of the compromise and deliberative democracy and coercion. And when I came to apply this to particular case studies, then I draw a distinction between physical harm and non-physical harm, where I look at the extent of harm that is being generated as a result of the right. When I speak about the scope of tolerance that we should allow to that particular group, when I speak about the exit rights, whether women or others have ability to leave the groups without too much of a penalty as a result, and I speak about the obligation of the liberal state to protect vulnerable third parties. The case studies that I'm taking on board, some of them have been taken on board by others. But I think that the application part of the book, this is chapters 5 until 10, they deal with many, many important issues like scarring and murder for family honor and female genital mutilation and female circumcision and sati and male circumcision, and then France and Israel. So together, all these, I think that they provide not only a theory, but also an understanding how the theory is applicable to timely and very pressing issues that democracies are handled or tackled today.
Well, that's really interesting. Just if I may pick up one particular issue out of those many, take female genital mutilation. Now, there's a wonderful discussion, very thorough, very sensitive, where you even question the word mutilation and all that. Why would you ban it, or would you?
I don't ban female circumcision. I ban female genital mutilation. I do not ban female circumcision. I draw a distinction between the two. I say that female circumcision, if it's done only for ritual purposes, and it's only a scar on the labia, then it's not much of a difference to male circumcision, which I also legitimize and allow. I think that female circumcision, when it's lumped together, female genital mutilation, it does a lot of injustice to the right. And what we need is the distinction between, to make a distinction between the two. And here, the extent of the harm, of course, is very, very important. I would never, ever would concede to torture. And for me, female genital mutilation is a form of torture. I cannot say that about female circumcision when it's only a symbolic scar on the outer labia. So I accept female circumcision. I accept male circumcision. I do not accept female genital mutilation.
Yes. Now, there the question would be, dealing not only with a young girl, but supposing if an adult female, when full possession of her senses, were to ask for it, what would you say?
I think the case is very different for adults. I'm dealing only with the rituals there are as their practices in the name of group rights. You are talking about individual cases that women later in life would like to do that. That's then when it becomes an adult, that's a totally different ballgame. The book tries to protect the rights of women and children that are vulnerable. If a mature woman decides to do that, then I don't have any qualms with that.
You don't have any goals with it.
I don't have any qualms with it. No.
Right. Well, let's now move on to Cameron and Merkel and others, who one of their objections to multiculturalism is that it fragments society, doesn't allow people to interact, doesn't create a sense of cohesion and common belonging. In the absence of that, the society could fall apart at any time. How would your multiculturalism guard against it, or more importantly, positively foster a sense of cohesion and common belonging?
Well, I disagree with this statement. I disagree with this observation. I disagree factually. That's not the case. Look at France, for instance. They say that in the name of the Republic, in the name of keeping the Republic tight and all together, the unity of the Republic, this is why they against the Muslim dress, the niqab and the burqa. And they passed a law in 2010 in order to make the unity of the Republic intact. They passed a law that banned the burqa and the niqab. Now look at the facts. Does this law breach between the differences in society? Does it unite the French Republic better, or it engulfed it further? I would say the latter. So I think that when you come and you coerce people to negate their own beliefs, their own cultures, their own religions, you just putting sticks within society. You are not allowing people to live according to their conception of the good. And I don't see any reason why you should negate this. I think we should appreciate pluralism. We should appreciate and adore this color, the variety of colors, of tastes, of ways of life, as long as there is respect for others and not harming others. But if this is the way that people would like to conduct their life, I don't see any problem with that. And I think that you are wrong in trying to coerce people to live against their religion. That's unacceptable.
Right. As we draw our discussion to a close, I have to ask you something about the relevance of your theory to the country in which it is written or where we live. What would be your advice to people in Britain who fear multiculturalism, attack it most viciously, use it to discourage immigration, all sorts of things falsely associated with? How would you reassure them that multiculturalism is not the bogeyman they think it to be?
Well, I developed this theory trying to persuade them. Bhikhu and I, we live, both of us living in the United Kingdom, and both of us have to endure this process of Brexit that is the result of populism, I would say irresponsible populism, and this fear of immigration. But this fear of immigration is unfounded. Again, people are just hostage to rhetoric. They don't really reason with the facts. Places that do not have a lot of immigration, they are the pro-Brexit, and places that have a lot of immigration, they are against Brexit. And prime example is, of course, London, one of the most multicultural cities in the world, and it's a beautiful city, it's a thriving city, is a city that attracts 1 million tourists a day. There are some countries that would love to have 1 million people in a year. And London is able, or was able, to become the city, the attractive city it is, because it allowed multiculturalism, because it allowed immigration, because of the influx of immigration that came to the country for so many years. So just reckon with the facts. Multiculturalism is enriching, is empowering. It's providing people a way to advance and promote themselves as we liberals believe. It provides people with the opportunity to develop their autonomy. So I don't see any wrong in multiculturalism as such. When it comes to do wrong, when it comes to harm women and children, this is where I developed my theory, in which I said, okay, everything is within boundaries, and your conduct has to be just and reasonable. And if it's not, then we should intervene and make it just and reasonable.
Well, that's very forceful defense. But last question, in what do you take to be the future of multiculturalism, not only in Britain, but in Europe or even the United States? Do you think it will survive the criticisms that are made of it? Or will it bounce back and people will begin to see its virtues that you have been concerned to emphasize?
I find it very difficult to believe that multiculturalism is not going to thrive. I find it very difficult to believe. I think multiculturalism is here and is going to continue. We have to take the most of it. We have to appreciate it. God forbid that we are going to live in a place where everyone is going to look alike, everyone will be the same, everyone will be dressed the same, everyone is going to eat the same food, everyone is going to have the same festivals, everyone will have the same colors, the same dresses. This will be a boring as hell sort of a world. Certainly not in a world that I would appreciate or would like to live in. So multiculturalism is going to thrive and we need to respect it. We have to put the boundaries to it, but it's part of our life. We should enjoy the plurality, the colors, the tastes, all this richness that come with multicultural reality.
Well, Professor Cohen-Almagor, many thanks for a delightful conversation. And for my part, I learned a great deal from reading the book. I have read almost everything on multiculturalism, and yours has been certainly one of the most stimulating books I've read in a long time. Thank you for writing it, and I very much hope that it's widely read and appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhikhu, and I would also like to say a few words of thanks to you, because one of my sources of inspiration for writing the book is you and your multiculturalist theory. I've been inspired and reading you for many, many years, and it's been a pleasure to see you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.